Ever since Golos was banned in Commander, I've been struggling to find a 5-color commander that really makes me feel as inspired as that card did. Sure, there's Kenrith and Sisay, even Reaper King, but none of these commanders give me an outlet to cast 2 or 3 ultimatums in a turn, or grab a Field of the Dead when I Ghostly Flicker them. Thankfully, I've devised a new deck that, while not capturing that same magic my old deck gave me, has a new and interesting way to win the game that may leave your table laughing or a little bit baffled. This is Esika Infinite Turns. Now, I know that extra turn spells are frowned upon in a lot of more casual games of Commander, but I think this one is worth looking at solely for the fact that there aren't any spells that immediately take an extra turn in this deck. No Time Warps, no Walk the Aeons, not even a Karn's Temporal Sundering. The way this deck works is a lot different, and our commander is actually integral to the combo. Not so much Esika, but the Prismatic Bridge is the single most important card for going off. So, how does it work? Well, the Prismatic Bridge in our upkeep flips cards from the top of our library until we hit a creature or planeswalker. Thankfully, I've taken the liberty of only including one creature in the entire deck, and that card is Timestream Navigator. This card lets us take an extra turn for just 4 mana, the City's Blessing, and a tap activation. To make sure we can activate it the turn it comes down, I've included a lot of artifact and land ramp. This will not only increase the amount of permanents we have in play for the Ascend ability, but also help us to get to the Wooburg casting cost of the Prismatic Bridge. Once we've got all of our mana in play, we're going to have to figure out how to give Timestream Navigator haste. To do this, I've included a multitude of artifacts and enchantments that do exactly that. While unassuming, these cards will add to our permanent count for Ascend, and also guarantee an activation from Timestream Navigator as soon as we're past priority, since the cost of the activation also puts the Navigator on the bottom of the library. This way we dodge any instant speed removal and also bank an extra turn. So here's how the combo works. We go to our upkeep and the Prismatic Bridge triggers, flipping until we hit our Timestream Navigator. It has haste from one of our haste enablers, and we immediately ascend, assuming that we have the requisite permanents in play. Once we've ascended, that's it. We just have the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. We then pay the 2 blue from Navigator's activation cost, putting it on the bottom of our library and banking a turn. We then can do any amount of game actions on our turn and then pass to ourselves. We go to our next turn's upkeep, flip our entire deck over, revealing the Navigator and shuffling our deck back into a random order. We repeat this as many times as it takes to kill our opponents, using Field of the Dead tokens or Felidar Retreat tokens, assuring our opponents that they will eventually die since Timestream Navigator prevents us from drawing from an empty library. If we have no cards left, we just activate it in our upkeep. Then we draw it for turn, play it, and then activate it again, since at that stage in the game, we'll have all of our lands and artifacts in play to pay the 10 mana. Since our combo is entirely based around a card in our deck and our commander, we're mainly focused on spending early turns ramping and staying alive. For the staying alive portion, I've included multiple sweeper effects. Wrath of God, Supreme Verdict, and Toxic Deluge will help us clean up problematic boards that might try and kill us before we get to assemble our combo. I've also included Ruinous Ultimatum and Cyclonic Rift as ways to set everyone in the game back to the Stone Age if things take too long, which should both be reasonable to cast if given the chance to ramp. We're also running a few tutors such as Demonic Tutor, Idyllic Tutor, and Fabricate as ways to help us get haste enablers or specific cards to help us get our engine online. They're low in mana value, meaning we'll get to weave them into turns when we're ramping. Strange card I've decided to include is Sea Beyond, which lets us transform a redundant land or a manually drawn Timestream Navigator into 2 fresh cards. The combo is obviously still possible if we draw the Navigator, it's just a lot less mana intensive if it's still in the deck. I've also included some light Staxy elements in the form of Arcane Laboratory and Rule of Law, letting us slow the game down while we get set up or lock everyone out while we combo. This is actually helpful for a deck like this because our combo doesn't really require us to cast any spells, meaning the one spell we do get to play can actually be afforded towards advancing our board state. Smothering Tithe and Rhystic Study can also be included in this category, punishing our opponents for getting set up by letting us accelerate on resources and combo even faster. In terms of budget, I feel like the majority of the cost lies in tutors and mana base. You could probably afford to build a very cheap version of this deck with tap lands, as the actual combo itself is only a combined $12. The original signets are all dirt cheap, and a lot of the land-based ramp has fallen in price as time goes on. The haste enablers can definitely rack up some of the price as well, but there's always room for picking and choosing. I think this list has a lot of room to play around with cards as long as they aren't creatures or planeswalkers. This deck was definitely a really fun challenge to try and figure out. Sometimes all you can see is how 2 cards would be powerful together, but it's hard to connect point A to point B to have it actually work as a cohesive strategy. If you have any wild 2-card combos you're a fan of, feel free to let me know in the comments or on Twitter at CascadeCascades. If you want to check out this deck list or any of the others I've made, I'll have a link to the list in the description. If you enjoyed this video, it really helps out if you like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.